My name is Puneet Verma and I'm from People Matters, and I will take you through today's agenda for the webinar. We have the privilege of having with us Esther Martinez, Editor-in-Chief, People Matters Media, along with Vikram Chaudhary from People Matters Media as well. First of all, I would like to give you a brief on the Career Builder webinar series. This is the fifth in line of this series. The webinar will share findings from the People Matters and Career Builder report, which was launched on the 10th of December 2013, which brought out critical findings to help recruiters prepare for the new challenges in building a talent pipeline. The key topics which would get covered in this session will be challenges in talent acquisition prevailing in India, talent networks, a game changer, prevalent hiring channels and their popularity amongst recruiters, what's driving the recruitment priority, and do recruiters really know enough about talent networks? A little about today's presenters. Esther, an HR professional turned entrepreneur and alumnus from ISP in Hyderabad, who chose to stay and work in India after her MBA, founded People Matters more than 4 years back. Until 2008, she worked as a professional manager with a host of blue chip companies in different countries within Europe, UK, and India. She is also the Vice President of the National HRD Network Delhi NNCR chapter. Vikram Chaudhary is an analyst of the Indian HR space and a columnist with the People Matters magazine. He has been analyzing the HR space in India for well over 9 years, with stints in both the consulting space as well as the mainstream publishing space. His areas of expertise include talent management practices, HR technology, talent acquisition, and learning and development. The partner for today's webinar for helping us make this program possible is Career Builder India, one of the fastest growing online job sites in India, connecting thousands of job seekers with companies each day. Owned by Gannett Company Incorporation, Tribune Company, and the McClatchy Company, Career Builder India provides intelligent tools and resources to help businesses attract and retain talent. We have allocated time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those who are watching the webinar live, you can submit your questions at any point in time during the presentation through the Q&A section. We will try to respond to as many questions as the time allows. We have a full, exciting, packed agenda for the webinar today. I will now hand it over to Esther to share with you the overview of the research which was jointly conducted as a collaboration between People Matters and Career Builder India. Over to you, Esther.
Thank you, Puneet. Thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us in today's webinar. So as Puneet was saying, let me give you a little background about the study, some of the key findings before we get into the depth of it. People Matters partner with Builder to conduct this research on the Human Capital Trends 2014. We started the study actually in October. There was a continuous effort to really get into not only qualitative data but also quantitative. So over 200 organizations participated in the survey. We spoke to a number of industry experts as well to include their insights about what really is the future when it comes to hiring. This is, again, at a very, very relevant time because 2014 is the year we're seeing many organizations, especially in the industries of consulting and service orientation, we're seeing a lot of hiring picking up for the coming year. So what emerged really from the survey was that online channels are by far a popular channel across industries. No surprise there. I'm sure all of you who are in the webinar will agree that online channels has been an increasing, interesting channel for all of us to really connect with our talent, potential talent candidates. The only challenge that we realized during the research was that we really, as Indian recruiters, we were not possibly investing enough, as the research also suggests, to leverage the full benefits that online channels really provide. in the sense that are we really using those online channels for employer brand? Are we really using those channels to communicate differently to different talent segments and so on and so forth? So the survey really reaffirms that there's limitations on how we're using those channels, and we are really only using those channels to reach out to a larger audience instead of really boosting the candidate relationship management, the candidate experience, and the social collaboration bits. So hiring, really talent acquisition recruitment today, and we will see that increasingly so, will require the effort to reach out to the right talent segment, to the right talent community, to use tools like SEO, to use tools like social media, things that are really, really mature in the marketing space but are very, very nascent when it comes to the recruitment process. So this approach really what will bring is engagement with the job candidates. It will also bring more future potential interested candidates to the pipeline. It will boost our referral programs, and that's what the survey suggests. So previously, I think many of us struggle incorporating technology in the recruitment processes. Today, there is a need for consolidation of technologies. Now it has become a necessity really to make sure that the recruitment process is not only effective, but it's also reducing time, reducing cost per hire, and eventually bringing business impact to the process. So the survey highlights, and Vikram will take you through it very, very shortly. One of the prominent changes in the recruitment landscape is to really look at candidates' pipeline. So it's not only I'm reaching out to a candidate when I have an opening, but do I really engage with a talent pool that I'm interested in? Do I create a connection? Do I create an engagement with them? And hence, it becomes a two-way communication. In 2014, what we'll see is the market will demand more aggressive talent community development. There'll be a requirement for talent pipeline process and tools. And, it's a new opportunity for those more companies who are actually really looking at leveraging these social media tools to get ahead of the game when it comes to the recruitment. So I personally with the survey, and I'll also try to be available for questions of the webinar. I thank you all for being here, and some of you have participated in the survey as well. So thank you so much for participating in the survey, and thank you so much for being here as well. With now, I hand it over to my colleague Vikram, who will take you through the survey in more detail. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Esther, and thank you, Puneet, for the kind introduction. As mentioned, I'm here to talk about the results of the survey that we conducted amongst Indian organizations on what their hiring priorities are for the coming months. But before that, I'd like to give you a brief context around the research and why we conducted the research. When we spoke to a number of talent acquisition heads, CEOs, and business heads in Indian organizations across the last year, we found out and identified that Indian organizations are faced with 5 primary challenges. And if we can move to the slide with the challenges, please. So these 5 primary challenges that Indian organizations face are of employable talent, leadership, campus hiring, employer branding, and the use of technology. Employable talent is a big problem in India, and we all know that the number of skilling institutes, both vocational and non-vocational, have mushroomed in the last decade. But that has also created an additional challenge for recruiters. There are a great number of job applicants, but only a very small percentage of the applicant pool who are actually employable. And as economic experts comment, this is actually generating a lot of economic waste into the system. An Aspiring Minds November 2013 research actually says that 47% of graduates in India are actually not employable. Moving on to leadership, it's no surprise that Indian organizations, and it's in fact a problem with most of organizations in the Asia-Pacific region, that organizations actually do not have a ready pool of leaders to fill up their positions, and the existing crop of leaders are actually beginning to retire. So there is a possibility that organizations may be left with no leaders or very few leaders in the coming times. And if we actually look on research conducted by organizations like Aon Hewitt, CEBSHL, PwC, Deloitte, all are singularly pointing towards the problem of diminished confidence of leadership in this region. Now, 45% of Asian HR executives said that their leaders are either not prepared or only marginally prepared to address their business challenges. And this is from a June 2013 Manpower Group research. The third challenge is of campus hiring. Now, the campus hiring fight amongst organizations has intensified, and everybody is in the fight to make an impression in the cream de la cream talent community in India. But 73% of recruiters feel that there are a few challenges associated with campus hiring. And they are the lack of communication and analytical skills of students, their refusal to join a company after accepting offers, and their salary expectations. And this is from a First Naukri October 2013 report. So obviously, campus hiring is a problem that recruiters are still grappling with day in and day out. The fourth challenge is employer branding. And we conducted a survey early last year and amongst business heads and CEOs in collaboration with Most.com. And very strangely and surprisingly, 60% of the CEOs taking the survey felt that employer branding is a critical element of their retention and retention requirements. But only 55% actually have any formal plans of employer branding. Now, what is the challenge that recruiters face with employer branding? I think as our research indicates, some of the main problems of employer branding that recruiters face include selecting the right mix of channels on which to propagate the employer brand, selecting the right channel at the first place, what is the way to maximize their ROI from each channel, etc. and etc. And all of these actually compound the problem that employers have been unable to grapple with when it comes to employer branding. And the fifth and the last challenge is the optimal use of technology. Now, recruiting organizations find it very difficult to optimize their technology for any kind of actionable impact on their human resource decisions. Now, oftentimes it's a lack of in-depth knowledge about the target audience that hinders organizations from taking the right decisions on talent. And in fact, a Talent Neuron September 2013 study actually says that only 1 out of 3 companies implement actionable analytics to improve their human resource decisions. So broadly, there are many challenges faced by recruiters in India, and the survey was actually aimed to identify what are actually organizations doing to meet them. If you can move to the next slide. The next slide actually gives an overview of the organizations who participated in the survey. So a total of 201 organizations participated in the survey across various sizes and across the breadth of the Indian industry. If you can move to the next slide. We asked organizations about what their top hiring priority in the coming months will be. And it was not really too much of a surprise when people said that hiring quality talent is their number one priority in the coming months. Moving on to the next slide. When we asked organizations about what are their reasons for choosing a hiring channel, organizations have very categorically and very emphatically said that the ability of the channel to build a steady and reliable talent pipeline, and almost 3/4 of the respondents have actually said that it is really their endeavor now to actually build a steady and reliable talent pipeline. And not too far back behind is recruiters are saying that it's also their ability to actually reach to a wider talent pool that will drive their decision to employ a hiring channel. Moving on to the next slide. When it comes to hiring channels, not surprisingly, job portals still are the most popular. But it is also encouraging and heartening to see that organizations are taking employee referrals and social media also very seriously. Moving on to the next slide. While organizations are trying a mix of channels, they are actually not very satisfied with their output, and 1 out of 3 have either responded that they are dissatisfied or they are actually very dissatisfied with their existing channels of hiring. And amongst them, the maximum dissatisfaction comes from their use of print advertising, their use of career sites, and their use of placement agencies. So organizations and recruiters are actually really clueless about how to actually get the maximum ROI from all of these. So actually, let's get on to what and how are organizations using each of these hiring channels, and what is their level of satisfaction with each of them. If we move on to the next slide, please. So what percentage of hiring happens through social channels? Indian organizations actually surprisingly rely very less on social communities, and as the survey indicates, less than 20% of organizations actually have any significant percentage of their hiring happening through social media. If we move on to the next slide, LinkedIn and Facebook are still the most popular social media channels for hiring. And a big reason why that is the case is because Indian organizations consider reach as a more important talent branding metric than engagement. But there is research to indicate that when it comes to hiring, probably there are other metrics that are actually more important than reach. Moving on to career portals, if we move on to the next slide. When it comes to career portals, where do organizations house their career portals? And 70% of organizations actually have said that they have complete control over their career site. So very few organizations actually host or manage their career sites through a third party. Now, this actually big dependence on controlling their own career site indicates that Indian recruiters actually prefer having control over their career sites. And why? Because it allows them to analyze the information from the site to fine-tune their talent branding and their go-to-market strategy. Now, if we move on to the next slide, if we, however, see with so much of investment in a career site, what percentage of hiring actually happens through a career site? It is very, very strange to see that only about less than 16% of organizations actually have any significant hiring happening through their career sites. And this is actually very strange because organizations have actually said that they want full control over their career sites. Career sites give them the kind of information that they need to build their go-to-market strategy. But when it comes to their actual volumes of hiring, very few actually are hiring actively through their career sites. Moving on to social employee referrals, if you move on to the next slide, please. When it comes to what kind of social employee referrals are organizations using, most of the employee referrals are actually offline. So organizations are actually not using online channels much. And only about 7% of organizations actually have an employee referral technology with the ability to link to external social networks like Facebook and LinkedIn. Now, social media integration to increase the reach and impact of employee referrals is yet to pick up very clearly amongst Indian organizations. If we move on to the next slide, when we asked organizations about what percentage of their hiring actually happens through social employee referrals, it's actually very, very strange and surprising that only about 3% of organizations actually have a big volume or a significant volume of their hiring happening through social employee referrals. Now, amongst the possible reasons, it could be the lack of knowledge about their impact and what actually are the options available to employers and recruiters these days for employee referrals. And it's actually a combination of factors. They don't know what is the impact of employee referrals. They don't even know what are their how and where are the options available. Is there a technology option available? Is there a social online channel available? So employers are really clueless about what are their options available, and that is why that explains why not many of them are using employee referrals much. Moving on to the next slide, please. Print media, not very surprising, has lost its preference among recruiters as an active hiring channel. And actually more than 84% of recruiters have actually less than 10% of their hiring happening through print media. And if we move on to the next slide, 63% of the organizations taking the survey actually do not use print media altogether. Now we move on to the aspect of job portals, which is the most popular. And if we move on to the next slide, please. When we asked organizations what percentage of hiring happens through their job portals, we've seen that there is a heavy reliance on job portals amongst Indian recruiters. And that actually accounts for a majority of the overall hiring volumes amongst Indian organizations. So about 18% of organizations have said that more than 75% of their hiring happens through job portals. If you move on to the next slide, Naukri and Monster are still the most popular job portals amongst Indian recruiters. Now, one of the things that came across through our research was that the lack of feature enhancements and fewer other alternatives available to recruiters have actually made sure that some of the traditional job hiring portals are still the most popular. And the way employers look at a job portal is mostly as a database aggregator. So one of the primary reasons why Indian employers use job portals is because they see that it gives them ready access to a huge pool of talent. So this is about the hiring channels and what are they using, what are Indian recruiters using. If we move on to the next slide, when we asked organizations about their plans to have a talent network, giving the fact that they have all said that it's about hiring quality talent. So about a majority, 61% of organizations have said that it is very important for them to have a talent network. And what do we mean by a talent network? By a talent network, it simply means that it is basically a company-specific community which is built on an online platform where candidates can opt in after providing some basic information in exchange for news and information about jobs and careers in the organizations. Now, candidate will opt to learn more about the employer and the employer brand because of some interest in learning more about the company and the organization. And the candidate has an interest in the employer brand because he or she can potentially work for the employer in the future. So, a large number of Indian recruiters said that it is important for them to have a talent network. And if we move on to the next slide, when we ask them actually if they have a formal network and for hiring, about 28% have said no, 36% have said yes, but about 37% of organizations said that they do not have a formal strategy around their network. So while recruiters are saying that they feel that a talent network is important, they don't really have an active strategy around it. If we move on to the next slide, when we ask them what are the reasons for not having a formal talent network, it's actually their, again, I mean, lack of knowledge and the lack of adequate ROI is actually a big reason why organizations do not have a formal talent network or a formal strategy around it. So people have said that they don't have the adequate bandwidth to invest more time in a new platform or a new product. Some of them have said that they don't have the adequate information about the ROI. And some have even said that they are not even present of any talent network products in this space. So all of these reasons combined actually have hindered organizations from actually creating talent networks of their own, where they can actually have a pool of readily employable talent at their disposal. If we move on to the next slide, when we asked our recruiters about what are the benefits that they perceive of having talent networks, a significant majority, 87%, have said that it is their ability to be always on connected to the talent pool. Also, there are a few other things that talent networks are able to do in terms of engagement with the desired hired pool. It's the assurance that job postings will actually reach the target recipients, and also the elimination of an extensive effort and cost of dynamic search engine for job postings. So overall, I think these were the results of the survey, and we can actually open it up for questions right now. So we have a question from Rakhi Gehani, who asks, how do organizations develop a talent network with zero cost? Rakhi, I think talent networks at zero cost is not really an option, because as research indicates, and we've seen talent networks in other geographies, they actually require significant investment of time and effort and money. Of course, and of course, the impact of having a talent network is more long-term than short-term. So the purpose of building a talent network is to actually, over a period of time, build a steady pool of talent who are engaged with your brand and who can actually act as your brand ambassadors. So I would say I don't even have a ballpark figure for it, but I would say it will be amongst the most expensive online options available at this point, but with the long-term perspective in mind. So we have a question from Gulu Balani asking about talent networks, the definition. So a talent network, Gulu, is a company-specific page on an online platform. It could either be through social media or be through a separate channel altogether. It could be also through a job portal or an in-house career portal. But it's basically a page where organizations host information about their employer brand, and candidates, only eligible candidates who are interested with the employer brand and about knowing what the organization is up to in terms of employment, voluntarily opt in to learn more about the employer and the employer brand. So this is I can actually give you the top of my hat the example of Accenture Connect, which is a talent network, and then somebody like me, if I actually want to know more about Accenture and its employer brand and what they do, I can actually sign myself in, and I will get regular emails and updates about jobs in Accenture, and what has been their mission, what are their hiring plans for the coming months, and so on and so forth. So that's primarily what an employer talent network is. So a few of you have actually requested us for a copy of the PPT. Now, we would love to share the results of the PPT with you, but in a format which is shareable. So we may not be able to share it with you in the format that I presented right now, but I'm sure we can make some arrangements to share the PPT with all of you. So Gulu has also asked us if a talent network is an expensive proposition for a small and medium business. I'm assuming you mean SMB as small and medium. I think it really depends on your hiring volumes. So if you are a small and medium business with only a hiring need or a pipeline of hiring for about 150 for the next 2 years, investing in a talent network may not be the right thing for you. But if you really have massive and large hiring issues and you are facing all of those problems that were outlined in the beginning, the 5 key priorities or the 5 key challenges, those are the reasons when you should actually think about having a talent network as opposed to just sourcing candidates through an online platform. So we've received another question on what actually are those benefits that an organization can enjoy with a talent brand. I think there are 3 or 4 key benefits that an organization can have through a talent network. I think the first and foremost is the ability of the network to be able to build a talent pipeline. And a talent network is actually an agreement between a candidate and an employer to exchange information about each other, so that they can both harness the benefits of a match whenever an opportunity arises. So that way, I think talent network is able to build your talent pipeline across a given period of time. A talent network also actually gives you greater insight about the talent pool. Now, organizations, when we actually were speaking about the concept of in-house career portals and why do employers want to exercise full control over their in-house career portals. A big key reason that employers have told us is that they want to know who is visiting their site, what kind of jobs they are looking for, and what is the right candidate and what is the right message, employer branding message that we can do through such analytics. But having a talent network actually gives you access to those analytics and those data points across the external talent pool. So there could be several leading indications about the organization's talent pool. They could be skills, what is the aptitudes prevailing in the market, what are the kind of jobs that candidates prefer, what are the types of communications that are most impactful for the brand. So all of these are actually information that organizations can have through a talent network. I think another key benefit of having a talent network is actually the ability to create a targeted communication. Now, when you actually have all of that analytical information in your hand, an organization is able to actually effectively build the most effective communications for the prospective talent pool. and this may allow the organization to get greater ROI insights about the organization's employer branding investments. And I think the fourth benefit of having a talent network is the reduced time and cost to hire. When you actually have a ready-made pool, a talent pool or a talent community, then it automatically translates into reduced hiring costs, because you are actually eliminating the cost of sourcing, you're actually eliminating the cost of filtering candidates, active and passive candidates, and also against shortlisting profiles against jobs. So I think 4 key benefits that organizations can actually have through a talent network. So Pankaj has asked us, which one is a better, short-term or long-term talent pipeline development in perspective to cost and efficiencies? I think in a way we've already covered that, Pankaj. Talent networks should be actually looked at as an investment for the long term, and that is where an organization should be focusing their ROI efforts on. So they should not really be looking at immediate ROI, that we'll get an ROI in the next 6 months. I think I was speaking to one of the CEOs of one of the biggest online portals in the country, and he mentioned that if an organization actually has to build a talent network, he or she actually has to give it an incubation period of about a year or so, or at least 7 or 8 months before actually they can start getting ROI. Now, also the ROI impact gets bigger and bigger as time progresses. So, initial 6 months, 0 ROI, and from there on, it's really a matter of long-term perspective. I hope that answers your question, Pankaj. We have a question from Arunima, who asks, do you agree that along with having a talent network, there needs to be a team with specific role to play in managing and collaborating with these networks? Arunima, I'm sure I'm not really an expert on building a talent network, so I've really not too much of insight on the development process. But from the top of a hat, I know that it is meant to be a self-sustaining network when it's actually ready. So yes, there will be initial costs involved in development of the platform and in designing of the platform, but it should more or less be, a talent network is meant to give you information and also a source to disseminate information to the network. So I think it should be self-sustaining. So prospective candidates should voluntarily join in, and whatever the organization's messages to the target pool should be actually disseminated through the intelligence gathered through the talent network. So over a period of time, their investment on people for managing and collaborating with a talent network should go down, ideally.
And with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webinar. There are many more questions which have come in and which we've not been able to cover. We will be responding to each one of them offline through emails. Once again, we thank today's webinar's partner, Career Builder India. Finally, our special thank you to Esther and Vikram for their time and invaluable information that they have shared with us today. And I would like to thank each one of you in the webinar audience for participating in today's webinar. We will come back to you with many more such webinars. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.